Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 20 of Avengers Assemble called All Father's Day. And overall I thought this was a pretty solid episode. Now, of course the storyline is really simplistic. This whole one of my parents doesn't approve of my friends and I've got to show them my friends are cool. You know, even though this is the Avengers, this sort of feels like it could fit into one of those half-an-hour teen dramas that you see on things like the Disney Channel, because it's really basically the same plot line, just with people with superpowers thrown in. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially given that this is aimed, of course, at kids. It's just really a little bit more simplistic than I was hoping for. So anyway, let's just kind of get into things. Apart from that, I really don't have a huge amount to say about this episode. I did like that Odin mentions fighting the demon Surtur, I think is how you say that character's name. He's sort of Odin's arch enemy in the comics and actually killed Odin at one point in the comics, but of course, this being comics, Odin did eventually come back to life, but if I remember correctly, it wasn't for after a while where Thor actually had to take up the role of King of Asgard. And I also like this episode because simply it actually takes someone like Odin and puts him down on the street battling bad guys in New York. We don't really see that sort of thing from Odin very much, and that makes it all the more interesting. You know, as powerful as Thor is, it generally is understood that Odin is even more powerful than he is. Otherwise, Odin would never have been able to, banish Thor to Earth and, whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall have the power of Thor and stuff like that. So, it really is interesting to see something like that, especially even in the comics where you see characters like Spider-Man sort of having to deal with characters who are like out of their league, like the famous Spider-Man versus the Juggernaut story, or the famous story from Daredevil where I believe he's fighting Nuke, and the Avengers show up. I mean, the Avengers are normally playing way out of Daredevil's league, so bringing them into a Daredevil story really just amps the game up. But anyway, so not a whole lot to say about Magog. I think that was how the guy's name is said. I might be confusing him with Magog from over at DC Comics. But anyway, he's not a character I'm familiar with from the comics. Thor is never something that was huge on my reading list. I mean, I've read a decent amount of Thor, but the characters associated with him are not something that I'm super familiar with. But overall, you can't deny that the action in this episode was really well done. I think this is actually some of the best fighting and action that we've had on this show since the beginning. This is some really top-notch stuff in that department. And let me see. Yeah, I can't really think about too much that I have to say beyond that. I mean, this doesn't really expand the mythology of what's going on with Red Skull and the Cabal. There's no, real huge character development. This is just a sort of thing where, Odin gives Thor his approval to hang out on Earth. Though you would think at this point the Asgardians would have at least developed a little bit more respect for the folks down on good old Midgard, especially the Avengers, given all the times that they've helped Thor or Spider-Man or whoever beat up Loki. I mean, seriously, how many times has Loki been made to look like a chump by the guys on Asgard? Now, you'd think that would rate some points in Odin's book, but of course it doesn't. Because, that would be convenient. That would be too inconvenient for a simple plot like this. But in any case, actually while I was watching this episode, I was sort of hoping that since Odin seemed to take a bit of a shine to Hulk, that he would actually take the Hulk to Asgard, and just the sort of the fun that you could have with Hulk, running around Asgard, where he would actually probably fit in pretty well if you think about it. There was a really great story where the New Mutants and some of the X-Men ventured to Asgard, and they even did a what if comic where they said, you know what, screw Earth, we're going to stay here in Asgard. And the great thing was, they actually ended up being happier in Asgard than they were on Earth. So, it's not as if that sort of thing is without precedent. And incidentally, those old New Mutants comics from the 1980s, well worth reading. They did have some good stuff that really holds up even years later. And yeah, I think that kind of covers everything that I have to say about this episode. Again, pretty much a very simple episode. Not a whole lot going on in terms of characterization, but definitely some really solid action. And it sort of stepped outside the comfort zone of what we normally see in these episodes a little bit, and I definitely liked that. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you this time around. Until next time, take care and have a good one. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi.